Obvious spoiler warning, if you haven't played The Last of Us yet and you don't know what happens, don't click on videos about the story, it's bad for you. So, here it is. People are mad at this game and they're angry at the story and they say it's rubbish and it doesn't make sense. What that actually means though, is it's because Joel dies. And I feel like people are getting their feelings mixed up with what makes a good story. A story isn't meant to make you feel good. A lot of reviews I've heard are basically talking about how the people in the game they liked didn't do the things they wanted them to, and therefore it's a bad story. A bad thing happened in a world where bad things happen. You don't like it, the world doesn't care. Joel and Tommy giving their names and location away on paper seems worse than it actually was. But put yourself in their shoes. Joel and Tommy just saved this woman who was alone. She didn't immediately try and kill them like most bandits do in this world, and then she led them to her camp. Most people in that world wouldn't do that, they'd just start shooting. This probably put them at ease a little, I don't know, but let's go further because we know Abby actually led them there to kill Joel. So, you're Joel, you get to this camp with this woman you've saved and who you've just fought off infected with. She had you and your brother's back, keeping infected away when he was dealing with the gondola. She didn't let you die, which if she wanted you dead, she would have obviously just let you get eaten. Joel doesn't know she wants to kill him and she wants to do it herself for reasons Joel couldn't know about. It's actually Tommy who gives his name and invites them to the camp, which he says is a few hours down the hill, which is not an exact location. He then practically introduces Joel himself. Joel merely gives his name after Tommy prompts him. He's not Batman, it doesn't matter what his name is, there's no Google to search who he is, even though evidently it does matter because, you know. But again, that's not something Joel could know about. And they've already introduced themselves when they were in the middle of all the hectic action that was going on anyway, so they didn't have time to think about it, and now they can't just change the name because that's suspicious. Tommy is not Joel. He was a Firefly years ago, but has seen nowhere near as much action as Joel. If he was on his own, maybe it would have been completely different, but Tommy obviously comes off less experienced here and therefore offers up more information than maybe he should have. So they haven't given them an exact location on where their town is yet, and they could be there all day, so it doesn't make sense to come off all cagey and defensive when that could be the thing that turns ugly unnecessarily. They could just be trying to gauge the situation, and giving out bits of truths to gain trust is a good idea, so they can survey the predicament they're in. We have to look at it from the perspective of not knowing that they know who Joel is, because that's his perspective. Who knows what would have happened if it was just a random group of people? They've obviously taken people in the camp before, maybe this is just another one of those situations. Or maybe Joel and Tommy had a way of getting out of the situation like this before. Like, I don't know, killing them all. It seems to have gone pretty well in the past. But because they were there specifically to kill Joel, things took a turn too quickly for them to predict. To see so many people mad is somewhat understandable. I loved Joel, he was a fantastic character, and the second he ran into Abby, I knew it was over. So the lead up to the cabin was a horrible time. My body was tense and twitching, I was so on edge, and it hurt to see what happened. It made me so mad. But I was mad at the character of Abby, not the people who wrote the character of Abby. This is a revenge story, a story about the loss of a loved one at the hands of people, and what it can do to someone. It's extra potent because we bonded with this person who was brutally murdered. It wasn't a heroic death, it wasn't the death he deserved as a character, and that's exactly the point. This world doesn't care how tough you are. Sometimes you walk into a house with a bunch of strangers you don't know you can trust, and it's the last mistake you make. Because maybe they did overplay their hand, maybe they shouldn't have said anything. He's not a video game character to us, he's a real person, and real people make mistakes that get them killed. It's that simple. Good writing doesn't account for reputation and prestige. It makes you deal with your feelings for the person they've made you bond with. And here's the real truth. Joel was a terrible person. Joel has admitted to killing innocent people to get by. He did a bunch of questionable things in the original game, especially at the end. Actions have consequences, and the only reason we're on Joel's side is because the story was from his perspective. But what if it wasn't? The Last of Us Part 2 makes you see it from the other side, in another decision that has people absolutely bloody furious. We don't want to control Abby, she killed Joel! This is stupid! Except it's actually genius. forget about Joel and Ellie for a second. Forget The Last of Us, and forget about the first 20 hours you play as Ellie. Pretend you're playing a game where you play the daughter of a man who was brutally murdered, and he was murdered for trying to save the world. I don't know about you, but fuck the guy who killed him. I want that person to get her revenge. And then she does, and she goes back to her life and her struggles in this world where bad things happen. She isn't the greatest of people, she shut herself off since her dad died, and she's dedicated herself to be ready if she ever finds her father's killer. And she does what she needs to get by, using the very morally grey WLF to do so. Then her life intersects with a child whom she eventually feels the need to protect, and they help each other grow as people and break down each other's boundaries. Does it sound familiar? Again, let's forget about the original story. What if The Last of Us 1 was about a girl who hunted down her father's killer, and that game made you care about Abby just as much as you care about Joel? Then, 7 years later, they make you play the original Last of Us game, where you play as the man who killed her father. Would you have gained enough sympathy for Joel by the end to justify his actions? Or would you hate that you're being made to play as someone who is the reason for your favourite character's hurt? That is what Naughty Dog are challenging us with. If you spent enough time with someone you see as a vicious murderer and learned of their reasons and spent time in their world, would you change your mind? Would you let go of your anger for them and let them live? That's the story. Despite what a lot of people are saying, Naughty Dog knew what they were doing. The problem is a lot of people can't put their personal feelings aside and objectively view the characters for what they all are. And when you look at the objective facts, Abby was completely justified in killing Joel. This world is real to Naughty Dog, and their job is to try and make it real for us by making things happen that are beyond our control, because that's what happens in real life. They made you feel something, and just because it wasn't happiness doesn't mean the story is bad. If that's your opinion and you want to stick with it and you have your reasons objectively, then that's totally fine. But what I see is it means they wanted you to feel helpless and to take back control. Not through acts of brutal violence, there's so much of that, but you take back control by understanding perspective, sympathy, and empathy. And fucking arrows to the face that explode.